and then kind of a little, I'm kind of wiping that one a little bit. It's got a little bit of a highlight right there that kind of goes down very lightly this way. We also have a really, really good highlight right there, up by where the stem is. And that's kind of all my highlights on my pear. When I go over to my apple, I've got some highlights that are right about in here, kind of in the middle, and it's wide. It's a much wider highlight. And it kind of blends a little bit too. And then you've got a little bit of a highlight right down here. And then a really tiny one where the stem was, but is no longer. It looks like somebody pulled the stem out of that one. It's got this nice little highlight right there. So now we've got our highlights in. So we've blocked in our picture. We now get the highlights. Now we're going to start looking for darker tones. I'm going to leave my mid-tones. That's what my gray is on the paper, is my mid-tones or half-tones. Some of you call them half-tones. Some of you call them mid-tones. Both of them are correct names. But now I want to start going in with my charcoal stick to add in some of the darker areas. So now I want to look for the shadow, or the, let's see, we want to call it the core shadow. We want to look for core shadow. So we have, I'm going to start over here on the right where my pepper is. We've got core shadow down here, here. So this reduction, you're taking things away from it, but you're also going to add things back into it. We should call it a reduction additive or additive reduction, huh? Would make a little bit more sense, wouldn't it? And you'll notice on the pepper, it's really dark here in the middle, kind of almost star-shaped or something. Bringing those out. In the back of the pepper, we've got some darker areas, kind of shaped like a trapezoid in a sense. And we also see some lines where those scallops kind of form. So now I'm getting my darker areas in. Then I'm going to go over to my pear, and my core shadow on my pear is over here. You'll notice also that the apple is casting a shadow across the pear. So we want to make sure we get that as well. There's this shadow that's being cast across the pear from the apple. I want to make sure we don't miss that. There's a little bit of core shadow up here towards the top. Okay. Over on our apple, we've got core shadow down here. Comes down and around. And remember that shadows, shading is very gradual. We have some core shadow right in the middle where the stem was. So we're going to put some core shadow in there. A little bit between those two. And let's see, anywhere else. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good as far as core shadow parts go. So now what I get to do is take my finger and blend them somewhat. And that blending is going to help you get that gradual shading that makes it look so round. Look at the difference between that apple now. That's a lot different. I also want to be careful as I get up in here. I don't want to smear the highlights that I did, but I do want to get some of that blended as well. Then I get to go over to my, let's see if I can do that from here now. I'm going to go over to my pear and do the same thing and get that rubbed in nicely. And if you accidentally go over a highlight, it's okay, we'll go back in. Don't worry about it. But you can see how it's really shaping these up and making them pop out, look realistic. I'm going to go in here and do the same thing on my pepper. The one side of the pepper is kind of all quite dark up until you get to those little highlights. And then from here, I'm going to come out and from the outside, I'll go in, but that's getting a lot better shape of my pepper. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing on it, so this is where I want to grab my eraser, I'm noticing that I kind of missed a little part of my pepper. This doesn't go up this high. That's kind of an odd shape, so I'm just going to take my eraser and erase some of that, and then rub back in, fixing the shape of that a little bit better. Okay, looks like I missed some of my blending a little bit on this one too. See, isn't this fun? We love charcoal. Now, you guys know me. I love getting messy. It doesn't bother me a bit to get messy. I'm just refining that shape to look a little bit more like what I'm seeing in my picture. I think that one was not quite as squarish as I made it as well. Now you can dab this as well, and then it won't erase it completely. It'll just kind of pick up some of the excess. That might help as well. So there's where I'm at now. Now my next step is to go in and refine things, which we've done. We've done our highlight, our core shadow, and because of our gray in the background, we've done our midtones or halftones, okay? So we're still needing some reflected light and some cast shadow. So we're going to go in and do cast shadow right now. And if you look very carefully at your picture, you're going to see that there's cast shadow underneath each of these. And again, the apple actually casts a shadow over onto the pear as well. All right, but underneath you'll see each one of them has some as well. This, where between the apple and the pepper, there's actually a little spot where you can see the table's really light. So I want to make sure that I get that in there, that I don't miss that. But the apple itself is going to cast a shadow as well. That kind of comes underneath even where the pear is, and comes out underneath the apple and along out here just a bit. There we go. Got a nice cast shadow there. Then underneath our pear, we've got a cast shadow that's coming right along here. Doesn't quite go to the edge of the table up on the top edge of it, but it goes over to our pepper. We're getting this nice cast shadow there. And then on the pepper, we get some underneath it as well, which helps actually define this shape a little bit better. And goes underneath where the stem is and out here. And then it kind of just blurs out, just sort of fades out. It's got this nice little cast shadow over here. So now we're getting our cast shadows in, and the next thing is to find our reflected light. This is one of those things you have to really look for. I'm going to actually blend in my cast shadow as well, just to make it look really nice. I want to be careful over here because my fingers are fat and I don't want to mess up my shadow there. So now we've got our cast shadows. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take, actually I think what we'll do is the very bottom as well, because this part of the table down here is really dark. So I can actually take my charcoal stick and just really go over that really well. This is kind of fun drawing upside down. I think I'm kind of liking it. I should do this more often. And then I'm going to blend it in with my finger. Make sure I get that really nice dark front of the table where no light is hitting. So if you look carefully at this picture, where's the light source? Can you actually tell where the light source is? If you're guessing that it's out front, maybe over on this side a little bit, then you've got it. You've got it. It's going to be, actually, sorry, no, I'm backwards here because I'm upside down. It's going to be over on this side a little bit. All right, out in front slightly. So it's directly shining from this direction onto these objects. All right, and the reason it's so dark on this side of the pepper is because the pear kind of shadows that as well. Keeps the light from actually hitting on it. So now I've got some really good blocking going in. Now, one of the next things I want to do is look at my background. And if you can see, over here on the left side, it's really dark on the wall. So I want to go in here with this. I'm going to use the side of it this time because it's not as dark. Well, it's kind of almost as dark as the front of the table, but not quite. So I'm just using the side, and I'm going to blend that in, making sure that I make a nice fine line over there. Like some of that's not wanting to blend very well. I have to push hard to get that to blend. It wants to stay in splotches. I don't think so. Okay, and we get that lovely dark side of the wall. And you'll notice around the pepper and the pear, about halfway up the wall, it's a little bit darker there as well. Not as dark, but a little bit darker. So I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of this around and see if I can blend that in a little bit as well around those objects. Like I said, we can go in and pick up whatever we don't want there. That's not a problem. You can see this isn't as dark as this over here, but it is dark. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and stretch it out a bit. I can tell it's getting warmer because it's not snapping on me. And I'm going to actually form kind of a flat ball part to it. Even maybe tap it on the table a little bit to pick up a little bit of the excess that I got on here. Just going to dab it. So in our last picture, the oil pastel drawing, you guys used your imagination to come up with your pictures and whatnot. This time we're doing something more realistic, and you have something to actually look at to decide, you know, how this is going to look realistic. So we're doing something realistic rather than something imaginary. All right, and then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to blend that a little bit again. It will not be quite as dark this time. Gradually lighter as it goes up the back of that wall. But then I have kind of a darker area, which is what we've got on our picture. It's a little bit darker area. Let's see, what else do I want to think about right now? I think since I'm working upside down, I'm going to work from the bottom up. If you're doing yours right side up, you might want to work from the top down. But I'm going to work from the bottom up. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and if you look at the surface of the table, it's really light, especially right on the edge, which again is where that light's probably going to hit that directly. So I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to get a nice fine flat line out of it that I can go across.